What's going on, everybody? This is Coulton Woods, and I am excited about this podcast today. I want to tell you how I increased prices 20% on average and only lost about 3% of our monthly paying customers. I'm pretty excited about it. So here's the deal. I know how frustrating it is to waste countless hours sifting through wannabe experts who never actually help you in the end. Then to learn years later that there was a real expert who could have helped you 100 times faster than learning it on your own. I have created this podcast to save you time and money while taking you on a journey with me as I learn from real experts who can actually help you grow your business. My name is Coulton Woods, and you're listening to Learning from the Experts. So back when I was living in Phoenix, I was actually working with my brother, and he owns a pool business there in Phoenix. I mean, that's kind of like the thing to do. There's plenty of people who have pools in Phoenix. So I was like, dude, I want to do your marketing for you. So we got together, and I started doing a lot of his marketing and building funnels for him and creating some emails and helping him with different things to help him with his business and increase revenue. And at one point a lot of the customers were on different prices. They were just kind of like quoted whatever they felt like at the time. And a lot of them were actually on the same price that they'd been on for like 8 years or like 5 years. And so they hadn't actually increased any of their prices. And obviously the cost of doing business had gone up, and they're still charging the same amount for the same like service, but the cost of that service had gone up. And so my brother's like, dude, we got to increase prices, and I don't really know how we're going to do that. We've just been like kind of like just scared and anxious about doing that because we don't want to lose customers. We don't want to like lose everybody, but some of these people actually need to like, they're paying way too little, and we really need to get them up. And I was like, cool, I'm on it. No problem. So I was like, all right, I need to increase prices, and I need to figure out how to do that. I mean, going to school and going to college, I had learned lots of, different pricing strategies and done case studies on how people price things. And so I'm like, okay, well, we've done some Harvard cases and blah, blah, blah. So maybe like that'll help me with like helping they're doing this. But I'm like, no, I don't. You know what? I bet you somebody else has done this. And so I wanted to up my learning or up my understanding of how to do this. And I was doing it in the moment. Like I'm learning in the moment. That's also like a key thing. And so I'm like, okay, I bet somebody else has already done this. And so I do what I learned how to do best in college, and I Googled it. And so I'm looking through, and I'm finding all these articles and different things. And I found this one, and this company that was a legit company, they were huge. And I think I can remember if it was maybe two different, so I'm not going to drop the name of the company, but, it's a big company, and they did like a whole case study and like, just like what they did to increase prices, for their business, because they talked about how they went from like kind of a beta to actual full launch, but they had like hundreds of thousands of people already, and so they were trying to figure out how they could increase their prices without losing their following. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is what I need. And so I'm studying this whole case up, and I'm looking at it, and I was like, oh wow, this is interesting stuff. So in my mind, my thought was, okay, we need to increase prices for everybody. And this is like a monthly service, and so they pay per month. And so you're upping, like we're upping the monthly price of what they're going to pay every month. It's not just like a one-time, price increase and we're done. So I'm like, all right, if I were to do it based on knowledge and different things from school that I kind of maybe remembered, but I hadn't actually experienced it. And so I didn't actually remember it that well, because you don't remember too many things that you don't have an emotional attachment to or an experience with. So I was like, okay, in my mind, if I were to do this, I would, first off, I'd blame everything else. Like I'd blame, oh, the prices of this going up, the prices of that are going up. Like, obviously the minimum wage has gone up, like we could, like, I was like, okay, we could just really, blame a lot of other things and like, oh, we haven't increased prices and like never. And it's been like 8, 9, 10 years, And so like I could totally blame all that. But as I was reading this case study, it was telling me the exact opposite. And I was like, this is really interesting. Instead, it was telling me that what you should do is create, I guess what you could say, an offer. But not only that, you need to tell them that the reason you're increasing prices is so that you can better serve them. And here's how you're going to do it. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And so I set out and figured out all of our, what we do in the service. I laid it out. I made it like, I said, okay, well, this is like what we do in our service, and we're adding this to it, which we had actually recently added some stuff to the service, but we didn't like make it too publicly known or make a big deal about it. And so I put that in there as one of the reasons why we're increasing prices to better serve them is because of this feature or these things that we're doing that's going to better their experience and better the plan that they have for their pool cleaning. And so I put all this together and I'm like, oh man, we just essentially made what we were almost already doing look like way better, but nobody had actually even really explained this to most of the customers before. And so they didn't even really know what they were getting anyway. And so we added a couple things that we kind of already had in there. And then what we also did is added 2 other plans that were much higher monthly. And we're like, man, nobody's really going to go for this really high one, which was actually like 100% higher than some people were already paying. But we're like, hey, maybe we'll get a few, like obviously we'll get a percentage. And I'd been through enough of like the ClickFunnels world and seen kind of average conversions on things that are higher ticket. And so I was like, yeah, we'll maybe get this much. So I'm like, man, I definitely did not know how to do this at first. I didn't know if it was going to work. I really was, it's kind of like, give you a little bit of anxiety because you're like, holy cow, like we could lose a lot of people here, but how do we do this the best way possible? And so we found this, some different articles, but this was like the main one. And so we put it all together and I'm like, all right, we just got to do this. Like, okay, here's the plan. So we're going to send it out. We're going to give them these options. We're going to create some urgency and scarcity with it and say, you've only got a week. We'll really give them 2 weeks, max, to respond. And if they don't, it's going to automatically increase. And so we're kind of covering our butts there, but, we made sure we contacted everybody. I mean, he's got hundreds and hundreds of customers. And so, this is not just like a few people here. So this is big, and like if they don't like it, or if they've got a problem with it, we're gonna have a lot of support to deal with, and a lot of people to have to figure out and help. And everybody's kind of like freaking out a little, and we decided to send the email out to all of our customers like at the end of the day, so that we could just leave. And then they can go crazy on us and call and leave hate mail and voicemails, whatever, whatever they want to. And we can just pick it up in the morning and kind of get working on that. And so we can have a full day for it. So I send out the email and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of freaking out, everybody else is freaking out. I'm like, man, phones are going to be blowing up tonight. And so we leave and like go to bed and wake up the next morning. I'm like, oh man, today's gonna be nuts. Like I just hope they took it well. I get into the office and I think literally like 2 people called. The rest of them just emailed us back. And it was like nothing but like positive. It was the craziest, weirdest thing. Everybody's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. I'm going to do this plan. And you know what? I actually really like the higher plan, and I want those services, and I want that, and so I'm like, what the heck? Like, this is freaking working. Like, this is crazy. And so some of these people were increasing their prices like 30%. On average, like 20%. Lowest was like 10%. Like, nobody was getting increased less than 10%. And so everybody's going up. And at the end of it, like, we only lost a little over 3.7% of the people, of the customers. I couldn't believe it. It was crazy. And I think because we added in a little bit of the urgency and scarcity, we also added in some other perks and different things, but, super crazy. Like, we only lost like a little over 3%, almost 4% of them. That's not much for increasing 20% on average. That's huge, which most people would think like, oh, you're going to lose 20% of your customers, Well, the craziest thing was that the majority of those that we lost were actually the hardest customers. The ones that would call in and be needy and, actually we were losing a lot of money on. Those were like, the majority of them were those customers that wanted to cancel service. So there's another little kind of crazy thing for you there. But what I learned in the end is if I would have done what I just knew myself, if I would have just, wrote an email saying and blaming, this, that, and this, I guarantee I would have lost more than double that on the customers. And we would have had a lot of angry people. And obviously, because we're blaming, we're kind of being negative. But instead, I searched out for an expert. I searched out for somebody who had actually been through it, who had the experience of it themselves. And so by doing that, I was able to use their experience, create my own experience, learn from that experience. And now I've internalized that forever. That was like a couple of years ago. That was a while ago. So, and I still remember that whole thing. And I still remember everything I learned from it. Crazy quote. Actually, I want to give you guys, Jay Abraham, that guy knows this stuff. It's crazy. He said, there's only 3 ways to grow any business. First off, you can increase the number of clients you have, such as like get more new prospects into paying customers. Second, you can increase the average transaction. So like just increase the prices. And third, you can increase the frequency that the average client buys from you. So those are the 3 ways you can do it. And one of those was to increase prices. And that's what we did. And definitely increased the bottom line revenue quite a bit, month over month from that. And then every customer that we brought on, we could sell even better because we had that plan laid out, that offer for them already. And people loved it, and they saw exactly what they were getting. So a lot less issues, a lot more good customers. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to drop on you guys today, that like there's people out there, there are experts out there who have already done this. They've already been through what you're needing to go through at this time. And if you go through it yourself, sure, you can learn from it. But if you learn from somebody else as you're going through it, oh man, instead of losing 20% of your customers, you can only lose 3%. Just saying. So thank you guys for hanging on here with me today. Hopefully this wasn't too long, and I hope you guys got some good stuff out of it. Are you looking to jumpstart your business by learning or getting help from the real experts? Go to learningfromtheexperts.com to find pre-approved experts that I've handpicked for you. Please don't forget to let me know how I'm doing by subscribing, rating, and leaving feedback.